This vehicle was one of the worst tier 8 premium medium tanks, especially when you look at the French mediums in World of Tanks console, and due to the recent buffs and the changes that Wargaming have implemented about the AMX CDC, this tank has actually become one of the better ones and definitely more competitive in today's matchup with the changes that Wargaming have done to it. So we're going to have a look at the quick changes, what they've done, and of course then get into some gameplay where you can see what the CDC is all about, and of course a tank that I managed to 3-mark back in the day, and certainly one that I would find a lot easier now that they have changed it in today's meta. So without further ado, let's have a look at the statistics of the vehicle, see where the strengths, the weaknesses, and also some of the failings, because this tank is not perfect. There are definitely some negatives with the vehicle. We're going to have a look at that now. So first things first, tier 8 mediums, and as a general rule, are usually one of the more lackluster tier 8 kind of vehicles in the game, because they don't quite get the damage per minute as you would expect from some of the tier 10 mediums, tier for tier, if that makes sense, whereby they feel a little bit annoying to play, and they can generally have like lower alpha, which annoys you because you're having to trade with tanks that have that 390 alpha, and so you're often forced to get 2 shots off every single time you take a hit, which can make playing them a little bit difficult. And when you have the armor that the CDC has, which is basically nothing, you get penned by absolutely everyone, including tier 6 vehicles. So even tier 6s with high alpha, things like the KV-85, the KV-1S, I believe, they all have the high alpha that can basically dominate you. I believe the KV-1S is indeed actually a tier 6, so tier 5, so I don't even know that you meet it. But at the same time, you do have this problem where essentially everything can pen you. So you've got to be very opportunistic with these vehicles, which means for a new player who wants to pick up a vehicle like this, it is going to be painful in the game. But as soon as you start to learn these sorts of tanks, they're very good at being able to give you an insight as to how to learn to play better. They're not very forgiving, as you can expect, having no armor. And that is what it allows you to kind of learn and develop your playstyle. So I think sometimes you do have to throw yourself in at the deep end, and the CDC is not necessarily the worst tank to do that in, because, you know, you do have the speed, the maneuverability, good DPM now with the changes, good accuracy now with the changes as well, because they buffed both of those, and allows it to play a little bit more aggressive. And they also gave it slight penetration buffs as well, I believe, meaning that you don't always have to fire exclusive premium, although in a tier 10 game with only 212 pen, you'll struggle to pen a lot of the tier 10 heavies that you'll meet, and so premium is almost a must in the vehicle, at least having a decent proportion for when you do get into those tier 9 and tier 10 games, so that you don't end up just sitting there trying to pen unpennable tanks because you simply don't have that penetration. But if you throw all of that away, the base statistics of this vehicle are very, very good. And that allows you to kind of develop the game and play this tank how you want to play it when it comes to a medium. It's quite versatile. It can go 57 kilometers an hour top speed, and it actually gets up to that top speed relatively well, having a horsepower to ton ratio of 35. So it feels really good at being able to get up to that top speed and maintain that speed. And also with the improvements to the hull rotation speed and some of the soft and medium and firm terrain bonuses or resistances that they had, and some of the buffs to those, you're able to turn a lot quicker and just feel in general way more kind of fluid within the game. And when you also compare that to the view range of the tank being pretty good as well, it didn't get a buff, but it is still very competitive, especially if you're using some of the perks and equipment like advanced optics, for example, to boost up your view range. So not only you can get actual damage, but you can get spotting damage with this thing. And so my build with this tank was to go for a general kind of accuracy bonuses so that we can fire on the move, since this tank is very fast, and because of that you do have quite considerable bloom if you don't use gun stabilizer, because it does reduce the vehicle movement accuracy by 20% essentially when you are firing on the move. When you're using the gun stabilizer as opposed to not having it, you are very, very inaccurate. So having that really does help out with this tank and makes you able to kind of get up close and personal, whilst also being able to move around at the same time and remain very accurate too. So In addition, we then go with advanced loader, boost up that DPM so that we have over 3,000 when you look at the packages and the top kind of performance of this vehicle. 3,086 DPM is what we've got, and that's using the perks as well that increase the reload, which is rapid loading. And that is really, really good. It's able to essentially compete with some of the tier 9 mediums in the game. If you can pen every single one of your shells, and you do in the tier 9, you can basically keep up with them. The accuracy 0.26 with all of the perks, which is really good. And yeah, you often don't have to miss in this tank as long as you're fully aiming. And with only 1.66 seconds aiming time with all of the bonuses that we've got, unfortunately Wargaming don't provide the base stat plus the changes that your equipment and stuff have. But hopefully, as with the news article yesterday, they'll be looking into providing that for us in the future. So that'll be really, really good, so that we can see what the base value is and what the actual bonuses that you've put on the tank are, so you guys can get a better opportunity to see. The tank gets 10 degrees of gun depression, which is fantastic, allows you to play those ridge lines. You get 50% silver bonus, so that's always good. And with the silver bonuses that we've got currently, if you don't know, as of the recording of this video, there is a silver with interest operation that you can take advantage of, and that allows you to just farm up so much silver. And then in addition to having the speed forward, we've then got the reverse speed of 25 kilometers an hour, so very good at coming backwards as well. Since this is a French tank, you all know what I mean by that. But anyway, very, very good tank now. I feel like it's got the buffs that it needs. It feels a little bit more competitive. Am I going to say this is outrageously overpowered or anything like that? Absolutely not. The armor really does kind of ruin this tank, and you are artillery's best friend since you have no armor. They're going to pen you if they hit you with those HE rounds, and basically anything with HE that's hitting you is going to be able to pen if they don't hit those big tracks that are on the left and right hand side, and any of the spaced armor plates and stuff like that that you have dotted around the tank, although they are very, very minimal and they're not really going to provide you any real bonus, and you should definitely not be relying on the armor of this tank, but more so being very opportunistic. So let's jump into some gameplay. We've done a little bit of a review of this one, and we'll see exactly how this plays in game, and hopefully you guys will see at least how to take this thing out if you're playing up against it, and the sorts of things this tank is very good at. So the first gameplay that we do have is on Arctic region. This is quite an early aggressive push. You guys can use this as well if you're playing in your mediums or some of the faster tanks in the game. You can take an early position, you can push forward, and you can hopefully get into the dip, which is in D4 and 5, or at least mainly in D4, and that way you can spot the cross of the opponents who are going to be going towards the A line, and essentially you can get some spotting damage at the beginning of the game on anyone that does cross. And that's going to give you a nice little bit of a boost to the beginning of the game, and then you can develop your play from here depending on if you're going to win or if you're going to lose, and you can basically turn around and make your mind up as to what you think is the best opportunity from there. But straight away we find ourselves up against the 53 TP, who we spot along with some of the other vehicles. You can see there we spot the WZ-111 Quillin, which is of course the tier 10 Chinese premium vehicle, and we also spot the Badger as well. So from this point we're able to get some nice few opportunistic shots. We don't manage to get any spotting damage, unfortunately. No one on our team really able to hit them, but we are able to put a few rounds into the YOLOing tanks over there. But one crucial thing that you have to know, if you come into this position, often the just basically silly players will decide to try and YOLO you, which is usually never ever worth it for them, and they never really come out on top. But you know, sometimes it happens and you just have to be aware. So maintaining a good awareness in this sort of tank is going to prove much better than a lot of the other heavies. You know, it's very crucial that you do that and you're not kind of sat in one place not looking at the minimap. Obviously in World of Tanks, looking at the minimap, one of the biggest things that's going to change your game and how you're going to come away with a lot better of a game. Unfortunately we take one hit there, which is kind of disappointing, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. You know, we've managed to pick up 1500 damage combined, incorporating that assistance damage, which is nice, and we actually spot the 53 TP as well. Now I go for the shot on him, unfortunately he gets tracked, but we do end up getting some extra assistance, which is nice, and that means that we've at least got a combined damage total over what we've actually got in hit points, 1400, so not bad at all. But In a tier 10 game, this is the sort of result you're hoping to get because, of course, when you are bottom tier in this tank, you know, you can't be aggressive because you will get penned by everything and most things have higher alpha than you. So just be aware when you are using this tank in those sorts of matchups. But you know, playing that more passive role at the beginning of the game, taking this sort of spot is a good way of getting that damage and increasing your damage core / received and easing your way into the later stages, you know, not losing a ton of hit points but getting a little bit of damage, a little bit of assistance that's going to be able to allow you to go in later on because you have the hit point advantage and also have a good damage standing so that if you do get YOLO'd or something horrible happens like artillery's just aiming at you the entire game, it's not going to be all too bad. But you can see here, not really much for us to actually do other than spot the enemy team, which is of course a good thing to do, but it can be you know, a little frustrating. But when you are in this frustrating position, you want to make sure that you aren't just YOLOing in, so just make sure that, you know, you stay aware and you're not doing anything silly. Now for some reason the M41 Brazilian decides he's going to YOLO in, not quite sure what he was doing here, and of course it isn't going to work out very well for him, but he is going to get one shot into us, which kind of sucks, but we finish him off. So that's the sort of player that you have to deal with when you are in this position, so just be aware of that. You know, it happens all of the time, and you can see here the WZ also trying to poke over the ridge to get a shot. Not a good position to poke over the ridge to try and get a shot at us, because if there is teammates in C1, G1 even, they're able to actually hit the WZ from where he is, so they should be able to finish him off if we had a teammate in that location, but apparently not. The heavy in our base is deciding that he's just going to sit on a corner waiting for no one to do anything. But yeah, either way, we're able to get in some really nice shots, just poking around that corner, just constantly dealing damage, which is what you want when you are playing against someone like that. Essentially just the accuracy coming in really clutch, able to kind of get some easy damage into opponents. You can see because of that top forward speed and the top reverse speed, you can pull up, you can deal your damage, and then you can avoid the damage because of that reverse speed being so good as well. So far, not a bad game, but we can certainly hope to get a little bit more, and hopefully our team are going to support us. Now, we get a nice shot into the Dragon, lovely one to get, and we're picked up over 4,300 combined damage, which is good for a tank like this. Certainly if you were at your, you know, 3 mark kind of percentage, you would probably be going up. Maybe not a huge amount, but you would probably go up with this tank. And then here we go, the second YOLO wagon on the enemy team deciding to come in, and this is where the CDC can be a little bit disappointing. I definitely shouldn't have gone for the ram there because we lost a load of hit points, and we could have done with those. We probably would have actually been able to deal with this Panzer 58 Mutz, but unfortunately I do ram him, and he does manage to ammo-rack us, so I guess it's a idiots getting lucky in the game that ends up finishing us off. But we do get 3,900 damage, and helps our team kind of deal with the enemy team as much as possible. I'm probably going to end up losing this one anyway, but it was a good little showcase of what this tank can do. So yeah, what, 4,000, nearly 5,200 combined damage, so a good one at that. And let's jump into the next one. And then the next one, yet again, another tier 10 game, because, you know, why not actually showcase the worst case possible matchup that you're going to get? Because remember, a lot of games are tier 10, and the tank can be very, very powerful in a tier 8 game, but it's probably not what you'd expect when you do come into those tier 10 games. It doesn't get preferential matchmaking, unfortunately, like you would see with something like a Super Pershing or some of the other vehicles like the Ag Tiger 88. Even if it is an old premium, it doesn't quite get that matchmaking. So yeah, it's definitely up against tier 10s, but you can use that to your advantage if you can lock someone down at tier 10 like you were seeing in the previous game against that WZ Quillen, where even if they are 2 tiers higher, you're using some of those premium rounds, you can still come out with a win. Now, we are unfortunately going to have to fire some premium in this game, which does sacrifice the amount of silver that you're earning. So yeah, I mean, playing a premium tank and ending up making basically no silver is never particularly fun, and especially when the tank is not particularly overpowered or anything like that. But it is a very, very rewarding tank to play, which is something that is always good to see. Now, in this game, of course, we are taking over the hill area over here. None of their team seem to have pushed over this area, which is both good and bad, because none of our team have gone over the other side. So always good when, you know, one team goes one flank, the other goes the other flank, and you end up basically doing nothing. Now, at this point, We got a little bit of assistance. It's that good view range coming into effect, and you can see here getting even more assistance on some of these tanks that are miles away. So it's really nice to have. For some reason our light tank goes and YOLOs in. Not quite sure why he pushed up so far. It was probably not necessary, and he's probably going to find himself in a bit of a sticky situation in a minute. So not necessarily the worst thing for our damage, or at least spotting damage that we can get. But it is annoying for the team. But we'll push in now, and we'll hopefully get a free shot onto the Reaper Scythe, which is good. A nice little 400 total and 1,000 combined. So good to see, and we just basically keep farming up this Reaper Scythe here. Easy one to get some damage, and of course he now gets taken out, and we get even more assistance due to the tracking damage that we're getting as well. So moving forward in this game, you don't want to push in too far. Remember, this is a tier 10 game, and if you do meet a tier 10, you do have significantly less hit points, you do have significantly less alpha like we talked about. So yeah, once again, more of that passive play is going to reward you a lot more than some of the more aggressive plays. Now, you're seeing here that we picked up, what, 1700 damage combined. Nice little one at the beginning, and just trying to feather a shot onto this IS-4, not quite able to do it, but yeah, at the end we do see that there is a huntsman out and about. There's a Skoda T56, and it's nice to see that one out of the game because that has 980 alpha, I believe, if it does pen both shots. So when you've only got 1400 health in a tank like this, yeah, it's not particularly too fun. But a little shot on the move, it's definitely something you can do now. This tank didn't used to be able to do that very easily. But yeah, with the bonuses that they've done to the accuracy, and with vert stabs being as good as it is in this game at this current moment in time, yeah, a nice little one to be able to poke over ridges and get free shots. And you can see there, we even managed to pen an IS-4 in the side, not even aiming. And we do take a shell from the left, but you know, considering the fact that we've already taken it, we might as well try and get another shell before we end up this game. But 2,300 combined damage, and now it's just a case of farming up some of the people on the enemy team who have overcommitted, like this 780. Easy damage here. You're not going to see any easier damage than that, and that allows you to really basically keep them locked down. You can see here we're just trying to feather a shot into that lower plate. Aren't able to do it, but you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. And you know, if you play this sort of tank, you know about like the damage just slowly builds up. Suddenly you're on like, you know, 3,000, 4,000 damage, and you don't want to be trying to go for all of the damage at the beginning of the game. Remember, it almost feels like you have to play this thing a bit like a light tank, where you are moving about and creating positions that are very easy for you to get that damage, and be able to get a lot of damage in small periods of time using the damage per minute of the vehicle, as opposed to, you know, constantly fighting at the front line. Because, you know, if you're trading 1-for-1 with tanks like the Le Mans Russ, or you're fighting with things like the enemy mediums, then yeah, it doesn't particularly end up very well. And so instead of pushing over to the right hand side, we almost try and flip ourselves, but we managed to get up into this spot, and we're able to kind of push towards the TVP, and hopefully we can get some side shots, use the 10 degrees of gun depression like we saw with the stats, and that really is very easy with the CDC trying to drive into rocks as well. Obviously having a bad day here with regards to driving, but this is the sort of position you want to get into. You can spot the enemy team where they are, and hopefully get some nice shells into the side of the enemy tanks. But you don't want to overcommit. You can see here we're just trying to poke up against the TVP. Nice one to get in there. We end up spotting some of the heavy tanks in the middle, but we want to finish that TVP off before he gets to unload on any of the teammates and get even more damage. But another nice little opportunistic shot into the Eradicator, and hopefully we can maybe finish him off as well. Because, you know, the reload with this tank, especially if you're using enhanced combat rations, 4.3 seconds. Very, very good. And when you are in this sort of late stage of the game, it can come in really, really clutch to have that DPM. Unfortunately, we end up missing quite a few shells here on the ABR-75, which allows him to get around our heavy tank, and it just delays the fighting, and it means that we're not able to get as much damage. But so a couple of shells into him, he's obviously got his tracks damage, and then somehow misses that shot. maybe a little bit of a badly aimed one, but yeah, once again, trying to fire on the move, not a good idea. Should always make sure that you are actually aiming, especially in these clutch scenarios. Somehow managed to hit the Su-130 PM over the railway track. You know how it is. Obviously, you can't hit the tank that's right in front of you, but you can somehow flick a shot into the top of the turret of the SU. But it is looking like it's going to be a big fat L in this game. 2 versus 7, and our friendly tier 9 heavy is about to go out of the game. The Su-130 obviously coming over the ridge and snapshotting us to finish us off. But once again, 3,700 damage. Seems like the CDC cannot seem to carry in games as much as you would like to hope, especially in those bottom tier games. But then again, it is a tier 8 medium, and they're not usually very good in these top tier games. But certainly the CDC can be very powerful in these games. And hopefully that gives you an indication as to how this tank plays. Haven't played it in a long time, hence the 80% on the marks of excellence. I don't think I've played it a whole lot since 3 marking it. And of course it's been probably like 4 years since I last played the CDC properly. And yeah, I mean, the damage standing potential or requirements change drastically over that period. But hopefully that's given you a good guide onto the AMX CDC and why you should want to kind of keep an eye on this tank. And definitely if you see it in the game, you want to be thinking about loading those HE rounds to get that extra damage. And if you're playing it, then just make sure that you aren't the one furthest forward all of the time, and you don't want to be too aggressive. Just play that more passive support role that the mediums are supposed to play in the game, and you'll find yourself racking up tons more damage and hopefully start doing some good games in World of Tanks console. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for tomorrow. We're going to have another video coming out, and of course going back to the daily uploads, and hopefully that'll be a good one. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.